Now, if you're a parent listening to this, looking out at what you can only describe as the barren wasteland of the homeschooling situation, trying to catch your children, making sure they get up in time, making sure they log on in time, making sure they know precisely what they have to do, they're not muted, they're trying their very best to listen in to a Zoom conversation with a teacher, trying to take part in a very, very complicated lesson. It's all very difficult. And if you've got more than one child at home, you will know how much of a handful it is, particularly if they're under a certain age, to keep them concentrating and to keep them following what is going on. We're going to talk now to Katharine Birbalsingh, head teacher of my Cala Community School and author of To Miss with Love, a book about the state of state schools. Katharine, a very good morning to you. Welcome.
Morning.
Thank you very much indeed for joining us. I read with interest yesterday what you were saying about possibly just cancelling the school year altogether and waiting until kids can properly go back. And I've got two teenagers myself, and it's absolutely true to say it's incredibly complicated for them and difficult for them. And home learning is nothing like school learning, is it?
No, yes. I mean, look, I'm not saying that should happen. I've said that we might want to consider it. And I do think that the current situation warrants the discussion. And it may be that we think, no, that's impossible. But India has done it. And we need to realize what I think is that we're kidding ourselves about how much the children are learning. Last lockdown, we did live lessons. We set lots of homework. And this is our sixth form. So think about that. Those are the children who are most engaged, the children who are most likely to get the most out of online learning. And when they came back to us in June, after the first lockdown, we found that really they'd remembered about 20% of what we taught them. Now, the fact is that in an online lesson, you can only teach about 50% of what you would have taught normally in the classroom. And then if out of what you're teaching, they're only remembering about 20%, you've got very little learning going on. And the reason for that is that it's impossible to test for understanding. It's impossible to hold them to account because they're at home. And often parents aren't able to support it. It's not their fault. They're busy doing other things. They're working, for instance. Normally in the class, the teacher's able to pepper lots of questions to get the children there and engaged. You know, I've heard so many stories, not necessarily here, but, you know, at various schools where they're teaching 100 children on Zoom. I mean, how can you teach 100 children and then get them to answer questions? At the end of the session, when they say, okay, you can log off, the teacher tells them to log off. Well, there's a bunch of kids who don't log off because they're not even there, because there's just a black box and the teacher doesn't know whether or not they're there.
Well, that's right.
And I tell you, the more disadvantaged the family, the less the child is getting out of the learning. Many of these children are not turning up to lessons at all. They're just not there. So we're all saying, oh, what we need to do is get them laptops, you know, and the government spends millions getting laptops out. Well, great. Then they're on Snapchat all day. We don't recognize, I'm not saying we shouldn't give them laptops. Obviously, that was good. But if there isn't a parent in the house who's able to keep the child on the laptop, on the learning, and then able to hold them to account and has some knowledge of English and maths and science and so on to help test them on it, the child is not really going to learn. And never before has it not been more certain that nothing can replace a teacher in a classroom. And all of that nonsense around tech being, you know, an equivalent to teachers, well, it's silly. Now, obviously, we need to be doing this at the moment, but I think we just need to be honest about the damage that is currently being done. And the divide, my main concern, because I work in the inner city with disadvantaged kids, is that the divide between the rich and the poor is growing greater by the day.
Yeah, and I think you will know better than anyone, Katharine, that every child is different. You know, there will be some children who are quite happy working from home and quite diligent and quite good at following instructions and quite good at not becoming distracted every 5 minutes. But then there will be loads who are not like that. I mean, even my two are very different. I mean, I was watching my older son, who's at he's left school now. He's at an FE college, and he was involved. And I walked in as he was sort of coming to the end of his last lesson of the day, and he was watching something, but there was no noise coming out of it. You know, something was being illustrated on a screen. Nobody was actually interacting. Nobody was talking. And then at the end, I heard a teacher's voice saying, "Okay, that's it. We'll see you tomorrow." You know, it wasn't like there was a conversation going on even.
Well, and And the thing is, if you've got 100 children to teach, there's definitely no conversation going on. And the reason why some schools are in that situation is that they've got half the staff in the school trying to teach the vulnerable kids and the key worker kids. Then they've got half the staff who they're trying to get doing the Zoom lessons. There's some schools that are doing Zoom lessons, some schools that are setting work. And frankly, it's chaotic for everybody, and everybody's doing the best job that they can. It's nobody's fault. It's just that we need to be honest about, as you say, for those kids who aren't able to manage necessarily the learning themselves, and certainly the younger the child, the less likely they are, the more disadvantaged the child, the less likely they are to be able to do this. And even our top sixth formers, even they weren't able to remember the content when they came back to school after the first lockdown. So, it's my thing is, let's just be honest. And when Andrew Adonis marches around and says, what we need are live Zoom lessons, and the private sector have it and state schools aren't doing it, and that's the problem, that really isn't the problem. It's far more complex than that.
Also, as well, Katharine, I mean, were this to be the beginning of it all, we might be able to have dealt with it slightly better, but it's actually not the beginning of it, because I remember back to when, at the end, again, I can only talk about my own personal experience, but at the end of Easter last year, my older son was supposed to do his GCSEs, so he literally wasn't really in the place to do any home learning, because he was meant to be just revising for exams, which then weren't happening. So he hasn't done anything really from March all the way through until September. The other one, who was still in secondary school, who was 13, he was getting sort of fitful homework and not really any online learning at all. And he was being told, do the homework if you want to, but if you're feeling that it's a bit overwhelming, don't worry.
Yeah, so that's exactly right. There are also key groups that have been really badly affected by this. So the current year 12, who never did their GCSEs, that not having had that opportunity, gosh, I feel so sorry for them, because those last 6 months moving towards your GCSEs, same thing for those kids who have now started at university and missed out on their A levels, same thing for the kids who are currently in year 7 and missed out on that push towards SATs in year 6. For those 6 months leading up to that, it's so crucial for their learning. Those young kids at age 5 and 6 learning how to read, there is so much delay in their learning. And I just think it's a conversation that should be had about whether or not we should be redoing the year. Now, it might be that for practical reasons in the end, that proves to be impossible.
Yeah.
Well thought. But I think we need to be honest about the current situation.
Yes. No, I think you're absolutely right, because I think you have to take with what has happened since September, you have to say, well, not very much really. And if you're telling people who didn't get to do their exams last year that in 2 years' time they may not be doing them either, and certainly at the end of this year they may not be doing them either, it's a bit difficult to get them to be convinced they're working towards anything at all. I mean, I've got lots of friends with varying stages of age children, and one particular, a woman who does a lot of work with us, she's got 2 kids at primary school. She's told the school, look, I simply can't supervise them because I have to work from home. They both need supervision because they're too young to be able to be left alone with a laptop, and I simply can't do it. And the school's actually said, well, do you know what? That's fine. Just don't worry about it. And I think there'll be a lot of parents in that situation.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting point. Look, what I'd say to parents is do what you can, as much as you can, because otherwise your children are falling behind. And I know it's really very hard, like you've just described. I would say that there are some math online software that you can get. Headteacher we love at secondary school, IXL, Smart Tick for lower down in the primary school. You can get them doing tons and tons of maths, get them reading as much as you can. Find something that they haven't been able to do that they can do. So like something like learn how to ride a bike, learn how to bake a cake, learn how to keep a ball up in the air for a certain amount of time, whatever it is, have a goal that they can then achieve and they can feel happy about. Because I also worry about our children's mental health, being stuck inside all the time, they can't see their friends, they can't socialize, because school clearly isn't just about academic success. It's also about meeting your friends, playing and building relationships and your teachers and so on. And all of that has been taken from them. It really is just, wow. It's very sad.
Yeah, I mean, I think both of you and I, if we were talking 2 years ago, could never have envisaged us being in this situation now. And the part of me says, well, we are where we are. What can we do? Let's make the best of it. However, an awful lot of evidence now coming through, Katharine, that a lot of kids are really suffering mentally with anxiety, not least because of the fact that they can't socialise, as you say, and they can't do all the things that they thought they could do. But also I think a lot of them are getting quite frightened by some of the things that they're hearing, some of the things that are being said, stay home, save lives, don't go out, you might kill someone. I think a lot of that is hard to take if you've only been alive for 12 years.
Yes, quite possibly. I also imagine that they're spending a lot of time on Snapchat and Instagram and House Party, and horrible things can take place in these social media arenas for children. Children get bullied, they get targeted, and the problem is because parents are so busy trying to work and keep things going at the moment, their children then end up on social media, and it's an impossible situation. Wherever parents can reduce their children's exposure to social media, please do it, because it won't be doing them any good. No,
of course. There seems to be at the moment a bit of a row going on as well, both in Cabinet and outside, about when to open the schools, whether it should be February the 15th or shortly thereafter, half term, or whether it should go all the way to March the 8th, as Boris Johnson suggests. Also, Labour Party now suggesting that half term should be used for vaccinating teachers, but the scientists saying, well, teachers are not really at any higher risk than anybody else. I mean, I'm not asking you to become very political here, but what is, in your view, the way forward for schools opening in this sense?
Yeah, sorry, those are our pits here at school for lesson changeover. Okay. And sadly, there are no...
Listen, I'm glad to hear it. I mean, that should be a sound that makes everybody happy.
Yeah, no, I know. Anyway, well, I think that it's really important to get schools open. And while I myself don't necessarily want the vaccine, I'll have the vaccine, and I want it as soon as possible for all of the teachers, because I want kids in school. Now, I realize that then bumps other people out of the way in order to give teachers the vaccine. But I feel like those other people, well, they can isolate, but teachers need to be in schools so that we can get children back into schools. So I'm very pro teachers having the vaccine as soon as possible, not because they're at risk necessarily, but because we need to get the schools open.
Yeah.
And so that's my position.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree in as much as, whatever it takes to get them open, if that's what it takes, then let's do that. And there's no reason why, with the number of vaccines that we keep hearing that we've got, that we can't just roll out more in any event. And it seems to me that there are social care workers currently being vaccinated, for example, who are working from home. So they're on the list purely because of what their job is. But if their job isn't actually seeing anyone, then you could probably take some of those away and give it to teachers. But as far as the sort of Gavin Williamson, Boris Johnson row is concerned, I mean, how much more damaging will it be if you stay closed until March the 8th?
Well, look, every day that our children are not in school, the further they fall behind. And the further the gap between the rich and the poor is extended. My kids, we're in the inner city. I'm telling you, they are suffering. So I want us back in school as soon as possible. And I worry that it won't even be March the 8th. I mean, that's where I'm at, Who knows? Look, I'm not in government. I don't know what their priorities need to be. But I think that opening up schools, the future of the country is our children, isn't it? And if our children don't know how to read and write and aren't numerate, then we're going to have trouble making the country run in 10, 15 years' time.
Yeah, I also worry that if they've never been examined, as it were, properly in an exam situation, which is not just about your exams and your results, it's about handling the stress and dealing with the way that you have to revise and dealing with, a point in time when you are going to be tested. I don't think that supplies them with the wherewithal to do well in society later in life.
Yeah, no, I agree. Exam preparation is a wonderful opportunity for children to understand how they themselves learn, how to be resilient, how to be prepared, how to have a strategy, how to overcome obstacles, and not being able to do that puts them at a great disadvantage. And I feel very sorry for our first year university students and our year 12 students and our year 7s, because they've missed out on one of those milestones in their educational careers.
Just one final question, Katharine. I mean, if we were to say put everything on hold and say start again in September, would that mean that you would delay 1 year, the sort of the first year of kids going to school, as it were, and more broadly, do we send our kids to school too early? Because I know some countries don't put their children into school until they're a bit older. What do you think about that?
No, I think school is good, but I would do. I'm a headmistress. So the thing is that if you've got lots of families who can do lots of teaching at home before age 7 and then send them to school, well, that's fine. But if you don't have that, then those children won't learn to read until much later. And reading is such a wonderful thing. You want children to be able to do that as young an age as possible. In fact, I would encourage everyone listening, if you've got a child between the ages of 0 to 5, don't wait till they get to school. You teach them how to read yourself. You can do it from a really young age, I promise you. Start them off at 3. You're reading the books and just keep putting your finger under the words and read with them daily for half an hour. I promise you, they will read before they get to school.
Brilliant. Katharine, great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Katharine Birbalsingh, I'll let you get back to work. Head teacher at Mykellar Community School, author of To Miss with Love, a book about the state of state schools.